I think of the mindful blinking for dry eye as part of that is that you've got to commit to, when we look at a screen, we don't blink as much. We tend not to blink well. Okay. So we sort of, rather than the eyelids coming together, we do these sort of half blinks, and that creates dryness across the bottom of the eye. And so had remarkable improvements in people's dry eye when they're not necessarily aware of how dry their eye is, by getting to do mindful blinking or blink awareness, where you take a break, you make sure that you blink a dozen times, making sure that the eyelids actually meet. And you do that a dozen times a day. And that's the tricky part, is committing to the multiple times a day to do it for several weeks. And I think that taking the ergonomic breaks is the same thing. You've got to commit to it.
Well, let's talk about dry eye. So a bit more about that. So, like, why is it important that your eyelids actually meet? So it's got something to do with the expression of like oils from the eyelids. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a number of things. So you've got they call it the lid wiper action. So the goal of blinking is to spread the tear film across the cornea, because our cornea gets its clarity from the tear film. Because our corneas, as much as they're considered clear, are really almost like frosted glass if they didn't have the tear film in front of it. They also get, our corneas also, the cells on the front of our eye and the cornea gets the oxygen from the air. So it's part of providing fresh oxygen and also sweeping away byproducts from metabolism, also sweeping away anything that's in the way. And so you have this lid mechanism to do that. But yes, there are muscles and oil glands in the eyelids that only get squeezed and activated when the eyelids actually come together. And those oils are good to stop what is probably the most common form of dry eye, is called evaporative dry eye, where the tear film is evaporating because there's not an oil slick on the top of it, trying to stop the aqueous part being sort of heading off into the air.
Yes, the I think the analogy that sort of makes sense in my mind is like when you put a cover on a pool, like a pool cover. So like I think one of the benefits is that it reduces evaporation of the water. So the oil surface is kind of important for that reason, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so part of taking breaks is not just giving your posture and your visual system a recovery. It's getting that tear film and the cornea, keeping it sort of healthy.
And when I started to learn about dry eye, like I can understand that people who do suffer from dry eye get that irritation. But I didn't really fully understand why some people also get blurry vision from dry eyes. But I think your analogy of the frosted glass is a good one. So do you mind just going over that again?
Yeah. So if you the traditional if you have frosted glass that's done by etching the surface, where you've sanded the surface or you use some sort of chemical to make it rough, and then you put water on that over that etched glass surface, the water fills in the gaps and creates this new clear surface, and the glass becomes clearer again while the water's sitting over the top. And so effectively, that's what the cornea is like. The other thing that can happen too is that if you've got sort of a buildup of excessive mucus in your tear film, that can make things look a bit sort of filmy. So people will say their vision's filmy or ghosty. And it can either be ghosty because the tear film's evaporated and we're looking through frosted glass effectively, or you've got this kind of excess mucus sort of hanging around because it's not being cleared by good blinking. There was an interesting stat that people were talking about that 30% of prescription remakes are because of dry eye problems.
Really?
So,
Okay.
yeah, it was something huge. Yeah, yeah. And it's something that we're a lot more mindful of in this practice, because we've been caught out with someone, with a few people where you sort of go around circles during a test, wondering what's going on, why we can't sort of get an accurate prescription, and then you look at their tear film and it's messy. So that their vision's constantly changing. Then it makes it hard for them to make judgments of what's better, one or two.